ready for this story that won't let you sleep peacefully.
Put on your headphones and listen carefully. This is a horror story, a story that could happen to anyone, even to you. It was a cold, wet night in late October. The kind of night when the wind howls through the trees and the rain lashes against the rooftops like icy needles. Daniela, a young college student, was alone in her room, trying to finish a project. She sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop the only light in the room. The rest of the house was silent. Her parents were away for the weekend. The only sound she could hear was the steady tapping of rain against her window and the faint ticking of the clock on her wall. But then, at exactly midnight, something changed. She heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A knock, soft, deliberate. Toc. Daniela froze. Her first thought was that a branch, shaken by the wind, had struck the glass. But when she looked up, her heart almost stopped. There was the outline of a hand pressed against the glass from outside. For a long moment, she couldn't move. She stared, her breath caught in her throat. Finally, she forced herself to stand, step by step, her legs trembling beneath her. She pulled the curtain aside with shaking fingers. Nothing. The street outside was empty. The wind whistled between the houses. Darkness stretched endlessly, broken only by the dim orange glow of a flickering streetlight. There was no hand, no one. Daniela tried to calm herself. "It was nothing," she whispered. "Just my imagination. Just the rain." But as she turned back to her desk, she heard it. A whisper, so faint it barely rose above the sound of the rain. "Daniela!" Her heart hammered in her chest. The air in her room suddenly felt icy cold, like invisible fingers were brushing against her skin. She grabbed her phone to call someone, but the screen was black. It wouldn't turn on. The battery had been full an hour ago. Then came another knock, this time not one, but three. Toc, 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 and then the whisper again. Clearer this time. "Let me in. I'm so cold." Her lips trembled. "Go away," she shouted. "Leave me alone." But the curtains began to move. They swayed gently, though the window was closed tight, as if invisible hands were sliding across the fabric. Her lamp flickered, once, twice, then went out completely, plunging the room into shadows. And that's when Daniela saw it. A face pressed against the glass. Its skin was pale, stretched too tight across its skull. Its eyes were pitch black, empty voids staring straight into her. And its mouth twisted upward into a grin far too wide to belong to anything human. Daniela stumbled backwards, choking on a scream. She slammed into the door and twisted the handle, but it wouldn't move. The door was locked, jammed. Behind her, the face pressed harder against the window. Then came the pounding. Bam, bam, bam. The glass shuddered violently, but it didn't break. And then the laughter. It echoed from everywhere. Hollow, distorted, inhuman. the glass spider-webbed with cracks, splitting outward from the thing's smile. Daniela fell to the floor, covering her head, sobbing, begging for it to stop. When she opened her eyes again, the window was whole. The cracks were gone. The face was gone. It was as if nothing had happened. But the room was still freezing. And then, from directly behind her ear, came the whisper, "I'm already inside." Daniela spun around, her eyes wide, searching the room. Nothing. The door that moments before had been stuck now creaked open on its own. Daniela bolted into the hallway. Her bare feet slapped against the floor as she ran down the stairs, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She flung open the front door and burst into the storm, the icy rain soaking her instantly. She didn't stop running until she collapsed on the sidewalk. She curled up against the cold, her teeth chattering, too terrified to go back inside. And that's where she stayed. Until dawn, when morning came, Daniela returned home with her parents, her voice shaking as she told them everything. The whispers, the laughter, the face at the window. Her mother listened quietly, her brow furrowed. And then she said something that made Daniela's blood run cold. "But Daniela, how could you hear knocks on your window when your window has had iron bars for years? Bars that were put there years ago." Daniela went pale. She turned to her father, begging him to believe her. But both of her parents just exchanged a glance, worried, as if she were imagining things. That night, Daniela refused to sleep in her room. She stayed in the living room, lights on, trying to convince herself it had been a nightmare. But sometime after midnight, the television flickered. Static filled the screen, and through the static came a sound, a whisper, calling her name. Daniela. She dropped the remote and backed away slowly. Her parents came running, but by the time they entered the room, the static was gone. The next morning, her father found the curtains in her bedroom open wide. The glass of the window was covered in long, wet streaks, as if something had been dragging its fingers down the pane, over and over again. Daniela moved out a week later. She never returned to that house. But the story didn't end there. Her neighbors claimed that on stormy nights, they could still hear it. The knocking, the whisper, calling her name. And sometimes, not Daniela's name at all. Sometimes, it whispered the name of whoever was listening. So tonight, as you sit here in the dark, think carefully before you look at your own window. Because once you hear it, once it calls your name, it will already be too late. I'm already inside.